Welcome to Situation Today with Gulf Business. This is a platform where we invite key leaders to share insights on developments that are changing the landscape of business in other sectors. Our guest today is Professor Richard Williams, the Vice Chancellor of Heriot-Watt University. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard.
Thank you, Nisha. It's really lovely to be talking with you again.
Yes, the last time you were here, sustainability was such a key theme of our discussion, and I'm really looking forward to having you share insights about education and where sustainability also fits in. And I'm sure we will have a lot to discuss. But just to kick off this conversation, if you could tell us about what you started the year, and so I'm really interested in knowing, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners also want to know about the key trends that you see playing a role in this year, education trends.
Yeah, I didn't know which to pick, but I thought the three that were on my mind were the enablement that technology is giving us, because we're all experiencing that in our lives, and it's absolutely true for education as well.
Right.
Also, the demand and need to give flexibility in education, because students in all sorts of different circumstances want flexibility, and that's becoming more important. And linked with technology, that's also an opportunity for personalization of their education. And I think we'll see a lot of developments in that area as we move forward. And then finally, something that's always been important and is even more important, that is, I would describe as continuous learning. All of us really need to be enhancing our skills, and businesses are finding that way, and universities are finding that way. So we need to educate in a way that gives people a mindset to have a hunger to continuously enhance their skills.
Well, that's a very key point. You talked about a continuing education. And how do you see Heriot-Watt playing a role in helping even bridge a skills gap, with higher education, continuing education that way? And where do you see this most important? And if you could tell us a little bit about the strategy for the university and your vision.
Heriot-Watt, like many universities, has opportunity to look at what you described as kind of a skills gap.
Sure.
And the first thing is to understand what is this skills gap. And we do that by listening to employers and to industry. And actually what we find is many of the skills gaps they have are the same as we have in our university organization, because it's about helping our own staff to develop and acquire the modern practical skills. So that's been our role, mostly to listen and understand. And then we find that we have some common needs, and those needs, quite a lot of them these days, are based in helping people to learn AI and adapt to learn AI and AI techniques. But fundamentally, I think for us at Heriot-Watt, we are trying to ensure that students are not just educated to develop their intellectual knowledge, but also developed personally, so they are able to acquire skills in confidence, in entrepreneurial-minded thinking, in creativity, in how they work with others, both as a team member and as a team leader, so that they have a very strong sense, I would say, of their own personal purpose. They have a feeling of how the world's going, and they have a vision for how they want to impact the world. And that sounds a little bit sort of soft, but actually, if individuals have a strong sense of purpose and they have self-awareness, they can work out what skills they need to meet the ever-changing circumstances of the world when they go out into employment. And what most employers are telling me is they want students who are adaptable, who have confidence, are clear thinking, can work in a team. So actually, it's what sometimes people call soft skills, which are the most critical in area of deficit. But of course also there are some specialized technical skills which businesses need, and again that goes back to data science, bioscience, and cyber security and science, sustainability science. So it's that mixture of personal skills coupled with specific technical skills that we play into.
How are we you training this next generation of students, and how is Heriot-Watt taking responsibility?
Well, actually, when you ask a student why you study this program, you might be surprised that 80% of them perhaps don't know, or they're doing it because mum and dad thought it'd be a good idea because so they could earn a lot of money or have a stable job. So actually the personal motivation of students in studying the courses isn't always perhaps as clear as you would think. And that gets us back into a conversation as to why do people choose and pick a particular program. I think for us at the university, we would, if we were offering advice to a student, I mean, the number one thing for us is that the student, when they have gone through the university here, that they're going to be highly employable. And a great thing about Heriot-Watt is that they are. And I suppose for the UAE and its educational provision, it would be really good if we were able to kind of measure employability from UAE graduates. We measure it from UK graduates in a national scheme. It's measured a little bit in Malaysia too, where we have a campus. But having that data is very important. And I'm pleased to say that Heriot-Watt University in the UK is the top employer in Scotland, and for postgraduates is the second employer. So we're very pleased to have that. And I think that goes back to some of the things we were mentioning earlier, having that strong sense of personal purpose. Because if you are paying fees and you're choosing to spend your life in the university, you really want to come out with a degree that will get you a job. And you want to have fun, of course. And I know, talking to our students here, they're having fun.
Well, that's good to hear. And then students having fun is an important thing. They have a more positive view of life and what lies ahead. Are there any key trends that you think are very specific to the UAE that you've seen? You travel the world, you've got campuses across as well. Yeah. What do you see that you can pinpoint or you can identify for us?
Well, I think of it in terms of opportunities for the UAE, and a couple of points here. One is the UAE is very dedicated to using modern tools, and in the area of artificial intelligence and other tools, it has the opportunity by being proactive in encouraging and working with universities and colleges to use AI in how we deliver programs, in how we assess programs, and in our education. And that's really important because around the world, actually, different regulators and professional bodies, to be frank, are often 10 years behind the current trend. So if our regulators and our professional bodies here in the UAE can get onto the cusp of the frontier, that will give UAE a big advantage because we'll be early adopters and in our education system. So that's a brave thing to do, but I think it's an opportunity for UAE and the education system. And I think the second point that came to mind as you asked me the question was to develop an educational ecosystem. And what I mean is connecting from schools to colleges to universities to employers and businesses in the UAE, and to see more connectivity between those providers to provide educational pathways. And that's really, really important because I think that businesses in the UAE and indeed in the wider Middle East, when they see talent created, they'd like it to stick in the UAE and in Middle East. And I think that comes through more connected partnerships because the networks are stronger, the exposure to the employer can take place earlier, and having that coherent framework also attracts people to come and study. And I think of all the economic models in all of the places in the world I visit, if we want to attract business to come and base itself in UAE, or we want to attract an entrepreneurial environment, talent is the calling card of UAE. So if we can create great talent and make sure it sticks, then that will attract other companies to come who want to utilize that talent, because talent is in deficit. And business is always telling us we can't find this skill, we can't find that person. So if we can create this ecosystem and really develop the connectivity, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Which, we can start with the challenges and then also have the mindset about AI. Personally, I think AI complements and it has great value. I would like to know what you think, if you could share.
So we absolutely, particularly in education, need to be committed to a human-centered development of AI. And it's us that's going to describe what it does to us. So therefore we must grasp it, we must mold it, and we must use it. And people, of course, also say, well, will AI result in a loss of jobs for humans? Well, I don't think so, but there was a very nice quote from a business professor at Harvard University very recently, and he said it's not the fact that AI is going to remove jobs from humans, it's that humans using AI will remove jobs from humans that aren't using AI.
Oh, that's quite an insightful response.
So we very much need to embrace it, to learn from it, to mold it, to be judicious in its use, and to have, again, the courage of our humanness to make sure that we can make it work for us. So I think that's a challenge really for all of us, to embrace it and use it. And actually, in a review I read recently, I don't think it was in your media journal, but I think it said something like 95% of the Fortune 500 companies are giving examples of where they're getting leverage through using AI. So we know it's happening.
Right.
So and there'll be many opportunities to use it, but I do think we need to stay fairly cool about it. Cool in the sense of being calm and determined and demonstrating its good uses and calling out its bad uses, because there are bad uses.
There are bad actors, as they say.
Yeah, so we just need to be mindful of how we're going to do that. And the world carries on evolving, and we're in it, so we need to train in universities and schools and colleges people who can cope with that.
No, like I said, the very key insights that you've given, and that's what I wanted to know as somebody in academics. You hear different things. It's been used for so many things. Students use it now to help them put together their thesis and their homework and things like that.
80% of students are using generative AI routinely.
Right.
And so that is a fact. And for us in universities, whilst we've had quite a focus on looking out for how AI is used in assessment, we need to pivot our focus to help us know how we can deploy and use AI for a better student experience, and train students how to use it, and receive training from students how to use it. Right. I have a student intern and he trains me and shows me how students are using AI, and I have learned and will learn a lot from that.
Well, I think that's what you hear everybody say, that if you're not on the bandwagon, then you're going to be left behind, and that's important to see, because there's a lot to gain from it. And even in our jobs and in media, it's about content creation. I think there's value. It's to improve what you do. It's to enhance it, and I think that should be anything that sort of comes in to make your job better. Yeah,
I would. There's a commercial product which is called Copilot, and I do think that is what it is. It's about having an assistant with you,
right,
augmenting what you're doing and helping you to do what you want to do better.
Right.
And that's the mindset for me. Yeah.
Well, we were also talking about, like I said, was a two-part question about also challenges that you see impacting the education sector, whether it's in the UK, it's in the in other areas of the world, or the UAE. What do you think are the key ones, and is there a way around these challenges?
Well, fortunately, there are always challenges, because the great thing about any challenge is it's an opportunity.
Right.
That is my mindset. And I think as we move forward in the world, there continues to be frank, even more uncertainty in the world than I think there was maybe 5 years ago. So we have to create graduates, develop organizations, both in universities and companies, that can be even better to cope with that uncertainty. And that goes back again to this idea of your mindset, the degree of purpose and intention that you have. So the reality is that the challenges will keep coming, and we will all keep responding as human beings in that space, using our values and using our human skills to make sure we can do the very best. And amongst the challenges are the rate and pace of change, absolutely. As we have discussed in AI, the rate and pace of change is continuing to be very, very strong. And also, we are having a challenge in some respect in that some parts of the world are almost separating. We've got complexities around the geopolitics at the moment. And yet, from a university perspective, if I might speak from a university perspective, one of our roles in the past and hopefully in the future has been connecting through universities in different countries so that we can build confidence and relationships across cultural boundaries. And sometimes when you look at a city or a place and you want to say, what's it done over the last 100 years? You maybe would ask a university that's been in existence 100 years because actually they carry the connection. So I do see the role of universities in helping to connect and stabilize and give confidence in relationships between nations, because they're very people-centered, they're very trust-centered, and there's often a deficit in trust in challenging situations. And I believe that universities, through their relationships, bring trust. So those were two examples I see for us as universities: the geopolitical divide that's challenging sometimes to deal with, and also just the rate of pace of change that we're all having to keep up with.
It's amazing to see the potential in each individual to make a difference. You don't know who's going to be the next person who changes, or the way business is done, or has a sustainability solution that everybody just totally appreciates and changes society.
That, Nisha, is the most exciting thing about education, in that you really don't know the person you're talking to is likely to have an amazing impact on the world, and some of that impact will be seen, such as the leaders in business and idea creators for which they'll get acknowledged, and some of that impact will be maybe hidden because their work may be in a sphere where the light is not being shone on it. But you can guarantee for every person coming to university, they're going to have an impact on the world. And that's why it's quite humbling to work in university. And that's why many of us work in university, because it's those stories that keep us going when we're facing the challenges. And there are so many of those wonderful stories. And when you meet people studying and see their excitement and how they're using their new knowledge for the betterment of society, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Which is why I enjoy talks like this. I've always had immense respect for teachers. I think they play an important role in the way we've become, or how society has transformed. So I think it's great work that you're doing.
Thank you. And of course, many of the things that we need in the world and in business in the future to make a real step change in sustainability, some of those things are quite difficult to deliver because they're quite disruptive in their nature. They might disrupt existing businesses, and the payback might not be in 3 or 4 years in the conventional I want a Silicon Valley entrepreneurship scheme. I think we and UAE has been successful in having entrepreneurship, which is great, but we also need entrepreneurship that is related to long-term investment. So ideas that are so disruptive that you couldn't write a business model at the moment because the business doesn't exist.
Correct.
And so that mindset and that opportunity is actually also to be captured by the UAE. So looking for radical innovations that will require the business models to be reworked. A practical example of that is in energy storage. A few years ago, and even now, it's hard to put a value on energy storage and energy storage technologies. We're familiar with batteries, but there are many other technologies. But a few years ago, you wouldn't have been able to get investment in that because you wouldn't be able to write the business model. So I do think As we create entrepreneurs and people with new ideas and they're working in these dynamic environments in the Middle East, some of those will be needing long-term investment to create big business as well as just short-term investment. And that's an opportunity for the Middle East because there's many nations in the Middle East that probably could take a longer view in terms of the value of the investment in it being both in its social potential as well as it being its direct financial return on investment.
Right, great. So as we were discussing trends, one of the things is micro-credentials, and they're on the rise. How is Heriot-Watt supporting this lifelong journey of lifelong education?
Yeah, so Nisha, I agree with you, and I think there's growing appetite for micro-credentials, and for us at Heriot-Watt, we've actually been in this business for over 30 years now because our MBA students who learn from work or home have been doing that in bite-sized chunks for some 30 years. And it's been amazing to see the opportunity and access that's given people to study, both as far as they can afford, because they would pay when they register for a next sort of part of the program, and also how they stack them together if they want to form a degree. So the concept is well proven. We also know that I think it's been reported that about 80% of people who were asked about whether they would be more inclined to do a program if it had professional accreditation in it, 80% it would make them more inclined to study. So one of the routes to support that actually is by linking together with professional bodies to put a professionally accredited micro module even within your current offering from a university. And that might not be credit earning, but it would be for personal development. And we've been doing that. So there are around 500 professional body accredited I call them micro credentials. They're accredited by Google, they're accredited by Meta, Microsoft, etc. So we now offer those to our online students and alumni. We have around 60,000 students we've offered those to, and they are taking those up. It doesn't take part of any credit bearing for the university qualification, but it enables them to study different topics during their lifetime and as alumni with us. So that's an important part of our offer as a university to people who study with us. The third area, of course, is this idea of developing a personalized degree, whereby you can pick individual programs as micro-credentials, get the credit for them, and then stack them together to perhaps form a full degree. And that's something we're actively involved in seeing what options we can do, which go beyond just business, but would be involving science and technology. So there's a lot to watch out for there. There's a lot of people wondering what to do. And I hope that we'll be able to use our long-held experience at Heriot-Watt to be able to offer some new pathways that way. And one of the areas that many of our students, both our undergraduates and our postgraduates, and actually our staff too, want to learn more about is sustainability. There's so much talk about it, but people do have a desire to know, well, what could I do? So we have been developing short modules for our own staff and our own students to help them understand a little bit more about what's a complex area. There's lots of voices and noise about this, don't do that, do this. So we're rolling that out this year to all of our staff, and then we'll be offering it to all of our alumni. So it's a kind of micro-credential, but it's really something that we're doing because we feel we want to do it, we have a responsibility to do it. And in the same way, later this month, we'll be launching a podcast series, which actually is chaired and introduced by our chief scientist, Professor Tiger Donovan, who's based here in Dubai. And Tiger's been going around interviewing people again to try and capture some of the essence. What are the important and helpful things to know? And also it plays into what should the university and education be doing as well. I have one of those sessions. I will send you the link, Nisha, so you can listen to it.
And just as you were talking, I was like, I first need to sign up for that course. Hopefully they take
it's
me
free.
there.
You can get it on. You can get it on Spotify
and podcasts,
and
of
the
course.
podcast,
And we
yes.
look forward to it.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners will also be very excited to check Spotify and get a link to that.
Good. Because I think in businesses and universities, we're all facing some of the same thing. We have many of the same questions.
Right.
And some of our staff and students are quite worried about sustainability and want to know what is the truth in these matters. And I think it is a role of the university, for example, to help understand what are some of the scenarios that could play forward. And particularly in nations like UAE, where there's a lot of air transport, and UAE has recently signed up for a green aviation pathway. What might that mean? Well, of course, listening to the podcast, you'll find out. But given that air travel is so important to the UAE, it's so helpful to know what might be the future in terms of travel. Because, a few years ago when I came to Dubai, I think it was something like 300 grams per kilometre would be attributed to me of carbon. And now that's down to sort of around 100 grams of carbon per kilometre. And then as we look forward with the use of green aviation fuels and the work that so many people have been doing, it's probably going to come down to a order 30 to 50 grams per carbon. And then beyond that, if we're able to deliver hydrogen powered planes, it could come down very significantly. But I don't hear much talk about this scenario planning, this long-term planning and journey, and I feel that's what people need to know to give them a bit more confidence about how things are working out. And so that's part of our role as educators, to support society by telling these stories out.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about them, because I think knowledge is important. The more you know about something, the more action you can take.
Yes.
And so we look forward to it. And just as you were talking about the future where you envision, hydrogen-powered planes, and it's exciting to hear things like that, but also exciting to know, what do you think is going to be the future of education a decade from now? Where do you see, or what role do you see education playing? How is it going to transform?
Well, you're saving all the most difficult questions to the end. The answer is, it will be what we make it.
Right.
So some people have said to me, oh, well, there won't be any role for universities in the future. And I think there won't be a role for some types of universities in the future. But we need to create the sort of educational opportunities that will be fit for the future. And that will continue to evolve and make change happen, for sure. But absolutely, there'll be a role for universities, and I think it will continue to change. Those of us that mesh in high quality research with outcomes that impact the world and affect our learning, there'll be a role for us. There'll be a role for universities that are practice-based universities. But I think one characteristic of all of the change is that we'll be talking more about our partnerships in education and society, because we simply can't do it alone. We will have to have and welcome, as indeed we do at Heriot-Watt, partnership with others. And I think that will be one of the symbolic changes of the future. We will see universities talking more about their partners, and that's also means talking more about the employers. So I do think we will see more partnership. And for us, in our university, which is over 200 years old, we've always worked with employers, and we've crafted our future. We're just talking about our 10-year strategy plan, actually. And we've describing our university as really very mission-based. We've decided we're going to focus on AI and robotics in terms of our mission, and on healthcare technologies as our mission, and on life beyond net zero living as a mission, and also on marine and the terrestrial environment. So we've said we'd like to focus on these 4 big areas and demonstrate how our research and our teaching can be projected out to work with partners in these 4 areas. So that's our take on the future, a mission-based focus, so people can clearly see what we're doing as a university and clearly see that we're creating these talent pathways, creating people with talent who are going to connect with their future employers, who they are likely to have met during their degree.
I have tremendous hope for the next generation.
Believe in the power of humanity.
Absolutely. Thank you for those wonderful words, and thank you for taking time to speak to us. For more news, come to gulfbusiness.com or read our magazines. Thank you very much.